When all our ideas are clear, or more or less established, we can always make adjustments later. We can begin executing our project. Sketch. All my designs start with a hand-drawn sketch. I always say that when I work, it seems like a high percentage as I always present my projects in digital format. But the sketch is the base of my work, and without it, so many things would be missing. Believe me, I've tried to work without one before. It's most useful for planning and knowing if something that you are sketching is going to be too difficult to create. It's also interesting to avoid creative block, or what I like to call blank workspace syndrome. And finally, it will make your project uniform. If you sketch all your letters together, then you will keep the same graphic style. If you sketch one and then 2 weeks later you sketch another, there's probably going to be a big difference between the first and the last one. Here you can see the sketches of the project I made last year. I like to keep them all together and if possible in a notebook or a sketchpad. Then they never get lost and I can see them all together. Some are more developed than others, depending on how clear the idea is in my head for that particular letter. Other sketches I rejected just because I wasn't convinced, but doing them still helped me a lot. For this edition, I'm creating a very special project. For each letter, I'm going to draw illustrations related to a movie or series that starts with that letter. I will use the same typography as a base, and I will use a liner flat style. I'll use a template like this. To do this, you just need to go to the grid tool and adjust the options. To get squares, you will need to input the same height and width and the same vertical and horizontal lines. Then we'll apply a thin stroke and transparency to make our work a bit easier. The font I'll use is called Hivitas. I like this one because it's serif-free and it's quite wide, so I can easily draw the inside. Also, it's the font I use for my personal logo. So, what more can I say? Now, I'm going to make the mold for all my templates. Now that I've finished it, I'll print and bind it. I don't like having loose pieces of paper lying around as I'm more likely to lose them. And it has a hard cover and it's not too big, so I can carry it with me everywhere. So my sketch pad is ready. To draw, everyone has their own style. I like to think of mine as a simplified horror vacui. I like to draw meaningful elements, and my style is usually flat with white borders, and I don't always fill my objects with color. Of course, for your project, you can use the style you feel most comfortable with. But 36 Days of Type is a perfect challenge to experiment with new styles and techniques. You've probably already guessed what movie I'm representing with the letter A, as I fill it with the elements from Alice in Wonderland. As I said before, it's important to sketch out all the letters before going digital. That way, you will keep a uniform style. But right now, I'm going to make an exception, just so I can show you how I digitalize my designs. If you don't have a scanner, don't worry. All you need to do is take a photo and email to yourself. I'm going to start to digitalize my sketch, so I'll make a new layer that I will call letter A, and this is where I'll place my sketch. Now, I'm going to adjust the size so it's the same size as the letter. I think that's fine. I'm going to lock this layer and create another temporary layer. Right now, I'm working on layer 4, although I'll change the name of it later. I like to add the color and the overall style at the end, so I'll do it monoline style with black borders and no fill. As you've probably noticed, I filled the letter with Alice in Wonderland references. It's one of my favorite movies, so I had to include it in my projects. I'm going to start with this cake that I'll make with a rectangle tool. It seems that here I have Snap to Pixels activated. I don't want this option. As if I have this up to here, I can't take it right to the guide. You see? It makes a kind of step. If I disable it, then I can make it as wide as I like. I like to have the grid so I can make sure that the size of the letter is more or less equal. I'm going to duplicate the square and place it here, so it looks like some kind of frosting that is dripping down. When that's done, select it and merge. Now, if I can keep this object selected and press A, which is the direct selection tool, I can then stretch the angles like this. If I double click, I can see the options for the corners that Illustrator gives me. For example, this one here is making a sort of a corner, an angle, but the other way around. What this does is make it flat, and what I'm interested in this. But I'm going to get rid of this, because actually, if I select all of it, it will stretch. What's happening here? Do you see? This is because it has two angles. So all I have to do is deselect one. And if I get rid of the anchor point that was bothering me is now gone. And if I click on this angle here, I can now make them all the same. As I've modified it slightly by deleting this point, I can't modify the anchor point. What can I do? Take it away. Bring it here and close the pen tool, and now, if I select everything, I can stretch and round all the angles. I'll do the same here, stretch and select. I'll increase the thickness as I like it to be quite thick, and I'll just change something here in the stroke options. I will also round the angles. This option allows me to create an angle like this. I'll duplicate this to show you all the options you can use here. You have this one. And this one. I think for this style, which is quite juvenile, the option I like most is the rounded corner. So that's the one I'll use. But you can use whichever one you like. Now to draw these lines, I'll go from here to here and duplicate by pressing Alt. If you round these corners like I had here and then, I stretch them pressing Shift, so I don't lose the scale. You can see that it's kept the size of the angle. In other words, it's not proportional to the size of the object. I'd have to press A again for the direct selection tool to allow me adjust it again. I'll stretch this. For example, the angle stays the same. It's not deformed. If I change the shape like this, and now I stretch, then the object becomes deformed. So if you don't want this to happen, you can stretch the sides by using the direct selection tool. Take a look at this. If you see that this is too much, I have few options, but what I usually do is create an anchor point with the Add Anchor Point tool. I'll select this and delete it. There are so many ways of cutting anchor points on Illustrator. You can use the one you find most comfortable. Now I'll do the cream on the top here. You can draw with the pencil tool. What's the problem? It makes this line curve and adds the anchor points that I think it's necessary. So here, for example, it's added lots. We can do it like this, or we can use the line tool, which is here. This does it straight. Use whichever one suits your style. I'm going to continue the drawing in the same way I've been doing up to now. Now I'm going to draw the cat. I don't always have to follow the guides. I've made them to obviously guide me, but it's not always necessary. I'll use a rectangle from some of the face and I'll use the polygonal tool for the nose. If you click once, you get various options, and I'll select 3 sides, making it a triangle. The problem is that it's so small that it's hard to see. I just need to enlarge it. Turn it over, flatten it, and there's my nose. Press A to round the corners again. I can make the eyes with the ellipse tool, and the pupil looks like this. See how all I did was to make a copy? I use the Pathfinder and select Trim. Delete this, and now I'm just left with the inside. If we remove thickness from this stroke, you can see the cat's pupil better. Group the elements of the eye and place another eye here, so it has the same distance on both sides. The best thing is to group the eyes and align them. Remembering to align the selection, otherwise it's going to appear in the middle of the artboard. For the ear, I'll use the Arc tool. Pressing O to make it symmetrical. And all I have to do is select one, add an anchor point, and remove this one. And with the Command J, join, duplicate, group, and align. The cat's face is now symmetrical. Now I'll make this leg here. Well, actually, the body from here. To make the leg, I'll follow the same procedure. Make a rectangle, but instead of stretching all the corners, just this one and this one. And to make what is actually the leg, the same, but stretch from here. As I don't want to delete the leg or the face, what I will do is fill it in white. To make the tail that goes down here, a huge tail again, I'll follow the same process. I'll round these corners, duplicate and go up. Delete this part and this one. Continue here and now round this corner. I'll get rid of this and this. Now I can make it turn again or go straight down. In any case, you won't really be able to see as it is behind the dodo's face. So I'll just do this. I'll carry on now with the dodo. I'll make the head with a square instead of a circle, and I'll stretch the ankles until I can't stretch them anymore, and they turn into red or whatever color you have them configured to. This is because this curve here interrupts this other one. To make the eye, do the same. Bear in mind that if you scale it more, the angles of the corner won't scale. However, if you do it with a circle, it always keeps the shape of a circle. I'll give it a white fill to cover the cat's tail, although I've also selected the tail by accident. To make the dodo's beak, I'm going to use a semicircle, so it comes out perfectly. I could use the pen tool, but of course, it would be hand draw, and it would look something like this. And here we can see that we have a curve. I like working with circles. Sometimes it makes it harder. So if you want, you can use a different technique. It doesn't quite fit here, but the distance is so small we can move it with the direct selection tool. I'll delete this part of the cat's tail and bring this down here. Now this part of the beak is done. I just need to copy it, rotate it symmetrically, and make it smaller. I can get rid of this. I'll make it 1 point thicker. Now I can remove this and this from the cat and put a line through the middle here. We'll continue with the dodo using the pen tool. We'll continue with the dodo using the pen tool. If I select this part here, I can stretch it more. But if I select it with another part that can continue the curve, it doesn't let me. It tells me which part can't stretch anymore. In this case, this too. So I'll just select this and now I can carry on. Here, I just need to stretch 3 corners to make the wing. As I wanted to have a swan's neck, I'll copy this stroke and adjust it so it fits in the side. To make the rest of the feathers, draw a rectangle this size, stretch this corner and here, and I can just copy. As said before, I need to make the rounded corner bigger again, or narrow the whole rectangle. Now I'm going to make some very easy leaves by drawing a square and rounding just 3 angles here. I'll make the vines using the stroke panel and once again, the corner option. This way the vines will surround the letter, making it stand out. To make the flamingo, I'll use the same technique as with the dodo, making rectangles, deleting the size that I don't need, and using the corner tool. This animal's beak could be a bit thicker, but you always need to think how it would look with straight strokes, and then, depending on the corners we choose to round, it will end up one way or another. I'll now make a very simple hat. A few leaves here. Here I'm going to make a close rose. To do that, you need to draw a rectangle with a spiral on the top. So we get a curve on all the angles. Continue the line over the rectangle. Continue the line over the rectangle. Here, I've realized, although a bit late, that I haven't included a clock in the illustration. So I'll change the flower for a small clock. No, I'm going to change the seeds on the strawberries by using dots instead of lines. I'll make a teapot using the stroke panel. I'll draw it outside, and when I have the shape I want, I'll fit it into the illustration. Now I'll arrange the objects so the illustration is balanced and you can see the letter A clearly. I'll make a flower that I'll place on the right. I'll crown the letter with a heart for the Queen of Hearts, and as a final touch, add some more decoration to the elements. So I'll give the birds more feathers and some stripes to the cat. Finally, as a key, I'll write the movie I've represented. As I said earlier, I like to add color to all the letters at the same time, so I'll leave my project for the next edition here for now, and to explain the rest of the process, I'll use the project I made for the last edition as an example.